Hi, this is Mitch. For many of you, you've never even actually seen me because this is mostly an audio podcast, but this is our first video podcast and our first podcast where we're sharing tips and tools. We call this the Toolkit podcast. So with this episode 85, you'll see Ginny and myself pretty much going over two guests that we had and sharing with you tools that you can use today. So this was inspired by our podcast with David Mead and Jennifer Moss. And our tips are how to be honest, humble, and human, how to build social and emotional health, how to create meaningful events that energize your people, and then finally, how to create inclusive infrastructure. That's how to create places and sessions where you can actually listen to what's going on with your employees. So we hope you love this episode. We hope you love this new format, which we're going to bring back every couple, it's like 6 weeks. And with that, let's begin. Hello and welcome to another episode of Team Anywhere. I'm Mitch, your co-host. I'm Mitch Simon, your co-host on the West Coast and on I say Mitch Simon because Ginny's title is much more elaborate than mine. On the East Coast today, we have Dr. Virginia Bianco Mathis to kick us off on another episode of Team Anywhere.
Oh, thank you, Mitch. Thank you. We should turn that into some kind of song or something. Yeah, I appreciate it.
You'll get there.
Well, we're excited to announce that this is our first Team Anywhere Toolkit podcast. And we always love having our prestigious guests come on and tell us their latest thoughts and research and practices concerning leadership and building culture beyond the four walls of what we're calling now traditional old America and world, quite frankly. We also realize that hearing those ideas on podcasts gets you thinking about how can I take these concepts and put them into our daily work. And several clients have asked us to help them drill down. Hey, given what that particular leader said, how do I really do that? For example, tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And so we said, wow, there's an opportunity here to give even more. So we took some of our past podcasts, we drilled down and came up with, here are some key highlights and some real boots on the ground kinds of things that you all can say immediately, hopefully write down and implement. You also can, in the write-up for this particular podcast, go to the link that is provided and get the actual toolkit that we put together for the podcast to share with whomever and go with it and make this stuff real. So for today, we took the podcasts of David Mead and Jennifer Moss, and we're calling this particular toolkit Fostering a Psychologically Safe, healthy and human work environment.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, I know. That's a mouthful.
Put it all together.
Yeah. Fostering a psychologically safe, healthy, and human work environment. And that's the toolkit. And there's four major areas that we're going to run through. Mitch, how about kicking us off with the first one?
All right, great. And if you are, well, this is our first one. So we have the toolkit and we want to make this as easy as possible. And we also want to share because, come on, the truth is we started this podcast because both Ginny and I have a lot of clients throughout the United States and globally. And we wanted to be able to take, what's new out there and be able to like immediately use it with our clients and pretty much just look a heck of a lot smarter than we are. And so that's why this podcast, because this is episode 85, we're 85 episodes through. We have a lot of intelligence and we also want to share how we're using it as well. So again, the podcast is set up so that you can have tools to walk away with. We just want to make it even easier to do that. So the first first tip in our toolkit is we heard from our guests, David Mead and Jennifer Moss, that one of the most important things, and this is coming actually from like our fifth podcast on the data, was be honest, humble, and human, which, okay, we hear that all the time. Be honest, humble, and human. Well, how do you be honest, humble, and human? Which I think is actually funny because we're all human and we're basically teaching you how to be human.
Yeah.
But still, it's the business. It's business, right? So So what we have is we have a couple ideas. I'm gonna go to my favorite one, and it's my favorite one because we actually adopted this in one of my clients, and it was build off of strengths. Build off the strengths of your employees by specifically asking team members to use their strengths. So we know for those of us who are very familiar with the Clifton strengths, for the stuff that I've done, the work that I've done is with Marcus Buckingham, is you're actually going to take a piece of paper and you're going to write down your team member strengths, and you're going to have this as an electric document. So when you're talking to your teammates, either in a group meeting or a one-on-one, you get to ask your teammate, hey, I remember you told me that you're really passionate about doing analysis, or you're really passionate about making presentations. How has it been for you over the last 2-3 months, which I haven't been with you, just it's been online. Have you been able to use those strengths? And where it's really great is if I'm going to prepare for a meeting, because we say, well, you need to prepare an agenda. Well, if you're a team leader, the best way to prepare is, pull out this piece. You're going to look really smart. Pull out this piece of paper, go through Abigail, this is her strength, and Jerry, this is his strength, and make sure on the call that the people are coming forth to use their strengths. So that's one of the very favorites. The other one, yes, but Ginny's got another one.
Yeah, I do. That brings that even more alive.
Sure.
And maybe this is where you were going.
Yes.
I just used this a couple of weeks ago with a leader who is a head of an international contract group. And of course, these people are all over the world. So she came up with the list of strengths, but she added another column, which is something they have worked on lately.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
great.
so she, of course, maybe had to do a little investigation or just look at the activity reports that, these contracts always need. And then she put on her calendar and she rotates it. So she's not doing more than 5 a week. Sets up a meeting with that individual, 15 minutes, and gets to the very thing you just pointed out. Hey, Larry, checking in, want to find out how you're doing, bring up a few personal things, and then say, I heard you did a wonderful job. The client really liked the latest contract you submitted, and you all had some really deep conversations. That really is what we're talking about in terms of our journey towards the particular goal. I need to ask your help on something. Now, you see, when you ask for the help, and when you ask for the help, you ask it towards the strength of the person.
Oh, God.
Right? Listen, you know what? You are really good on the numbers. And that has never been my favorite. We're putting together a report.
Okay.
It's going to some of your folks in that client base. What would be the best format? What do they like? What resonates with them? What you're doing, you're paying attention to them. You're letting them know what their strengths are. You're letting them know, I know what you've been doing. And they see their value add. Yeah. That's the whole point of being the humble and the gracious. I would
say, Ginny, first of all, what you're sharing, it's very emotional to me because, I started the business that I'm in, and we started this podcast because, we felt so alone in the corporate world. The pandemic starts. Ginny and I start the podcast, and we're basically asking the question, what is culture?
Mm-hmm.
And, that's culture. The culture is going back as it's being human. What this, this tool, like, gosh, do I need a tool to be human? Well, maybe you do. Maybe you do, frankly, if I have a team of 20 people and I could put down their strengths and I could put down the projects that they're working on, and I'm going to go ask for help, which first of all is such a be honest, humble. And
exactly.
At the same time, I'm making that team member feel special, and I'm practicing humility.
Yes.
The team member feels seen. And,
Oh, totally.
and that's culture. I mean, that's the culture. We just read a really good article that Rachel Casanova was on our podcast twice, shared
Yes.
from Fast Company. That is what employees really, really want this today. It's an opportunity with having a team anywhere. I know we use it.
Yes.
Team
Yes.
anywhere, but as a team anywhere, that's just great. So that's kind of hit a soft spot in my
right. Well, and we're going to Casanova's latest piece.
Yeah.
It's not as they are saying. It's not the ping pong tables
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
It's the respect. They want the respect, and
yeah,
the examples that you and I just
Yeah.
gave show the ultimate.
yeah, and so just to kind of
yeah.
add their, you can add their strengths, you can add the projects, you can on this this grid Excel spreadsheet, because everyone knows Excel. We've also added what are your personal goals, your professional goals.
Yes.
And then the other one I think is your family situation, because the greatest managers would write, okay, actually I just spoke to someone at Sony today. He has 5 boys and 1 girl. How are those boys and how's that girl doing? So
Sure.
these are all great tools. Now I want to add one more, and then I want to go to you on the next one. We don't have time to really discuss all of them on the tool, but you can see there's a lot. I just think that this other one on how do you be honest, humble, and human again.
Yes.
Like, do I really need a lesson in how to be honest, humble, and human? I guess I do. Is be the last to speak in a meeting.
God.
Now, as a leader, that's you're like, wait, I'm being paid to direct this meeting. Can you just just kind of wait? And so, what do you think? What do you think, Margaret? What do you think, Millie? And what do you think, Zelda, or whatever? It's and I want to hear everybody before you hear what I'm hearing. One, it puts everyone on the spot, a little bit nervous. It just opens up the playing field for just like, God, my boss is amazing.
Now I have one caveat to that.
What's your caveat?
I encourage, and I've seen leaders do this, and it does add a positive touch. It's okay to say, hey, we have a sensitive topic to talk about, and I do have some ideas.
Yeah, I love that.
Yet,
I love that.
I want to hold on to them.
That's so good.
And I want to hear from you all first.
Yeah, you're making
because
me cry.
of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, you're making me cry here. Yeah. I need to get some tissues.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have one more thing on this one, and then we'll go on the next one.
Please.
And that is making sure that you ask enough questions in all of those sessions. Like you said, if you do speak first, let them be questions, not your opinion, not the decision to be made.
Yeah, if you're going to first ask questions and don't give opinions. I love that. Yeah.
And the last thing on this section is you are not humble or human unless other people say you are. So I'm going to be more humble. And then how are you going to do that in such a way, not the way you think, in such a way that the other person. And so one short example, I'm dealing with a leader now, and here's what he did. Twice a day, he never did this before. Twice a day, he goes into, they're starting to come back in the office.
Yeah.
He goes into where they have coffee. And he forces himself to stay there for 20 minutes. And chat.
Wow.
He hates it, right? I'm wasting time. But
wow.
It has already made this incredible difference. And wait a minute, then he found a way to do it on Zoom. He calls, he's standing in the coffee room.
Wow, okay.
Hey, I know you're working at home today. As you can see, I'm in the coffee room. How's it going?
This is coffee.
So anyway, all right. The next one is something called social emotional health. And there are a lot of books now. And
what does that mean, social emotional?
Yeah, what does this mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
Making the discussion of health part of the social community.
Okay.
Not to be hidden.
Okay.
Not to be ashamed of. If you have to ask for help, you ask for help. And then defining what that means for our organization. I just saw a slide deck of a company out of the state of Georgia, and their acronym is DID. And you need to discover and then discuss and talk about what are the stressors for us here. Not in the world, not in this article, in this company, in this organization. And then what would really be helpful for us?
God, that is so.
And I mean, it's so simple, and yet here's what we think. Leaders go, well, we better get a whole bunch of seminars on stress here.
So, okay. So we definitely, what's great, all of our listeners out there is we're actually sharing this tool. I think we're going to add to the tool, which is really simply is ask your team what wellness is for them.
That's
because,
right.
We really, on another podcast, I guess we're plugging our podcast on our podcast, but, yeah,
Podcast squared.
Right. But we really did have some really great podcasts on wellness, and it's kind of simple as what do we think is wellness here?
Right.
God.
Right.
So and is it so simple? We're like not seeing that. I don't know.
And then have do some role plays, leaders, about how you can demonstrate it. I have a great little story that happened recently to my son, who is unfortunately an attorney and dealing with
so am I. You can take it personally.
Okay, that's right. One of his leaders, and it shows you it's still uncomfortable. Here's what happened. In another part of the conversation, the leader let it be known that his son was coming in, and he would be spending the evening. Wow. Meanwhile, my son is making it clear that he's working into 10 o'clock to get this deliverable that, by the way, Mr. Lawyer, you asked for. And the lawyer says, well, when are you going to have it to me? And my son says, I'll have it to you at 8 p.m. The lawyer hesitates. And then he says, well, I may not get to it into the morning, but my son could tell it was hard for him to admit that I had something personal and important to do.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So I think at least what I want to do is share, my experience. So again, this is a client at Sony, which was, he just started to bring up, let's talk about balance, work, life, expectations. What are expectations? He, and then again, so all these ideas, I did not come up with these ideas. I got these ideas from our podcast. We have a great podcast.
Yeah, I know.
It was, so it was to share, he shared analytics, he shared, here's the data we're seeing on productivity and burnout. In fact, we interviewed the woman who wrote The Burnout Epidemic, which is a fantastic book.
Yep. Yep.
And then the other thing was highlighting examples of asking for help. So again, which is kind of what we talked about in the first one. Right. What he did is he put wellness on the table, and he said, look, this is important to us. I'm giving you permission to
there you go
and to move on it. And then I don't know if he really shared, but there was someone on his team that actually, had, almost a breakdown because of the demands.
Total.
And so it's something where, again, it's not a flavor of the week. It's something that we need to talk about, because for some companies, since COVID, work has doubled or tripled or quadrupled.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And also helping our leaders, managers, even coworkers be able to recognize some of the signs with a coworker, ask some key questions, and make it okay. In fact, I know one organization that actually came up with a little job aid acronym to help with this, on how to ask for help.
That's great. All right, let's get to the next one.
Okay.
Next one.
All righty. Meaningful events. This is your baby.
This is my baby. So this is a baby that Caroline Melly and I came up with a product. And of course, I think it's available on the blogs. We spent I think 6 to 9 months coming up with bringing back the buzz. Now, what's great was we came up with this, I think about a year ago. What we're hearing with David Mead and Jennifer Moss and more of our guests, which is, okay, so it is time to go back in the office. For some, others are not. Definitely what we're hearing for the first time is create meaningful events that energize people.
Yeah.
So not an event, but a meaningful event that really energizes people, which means that you need to spend some time. This isn't actually in bringing back the buzz. You need to really spend some time on figuring out what is it that people are missing, asking your people, what are you missing?
Yes.
And then creating these events. Now, to do this, I guess in our toolkit is, really as a manager or a leader or a team leader is you're going to have to basically come up with a philosophy about what do we want to do in our company, and also do we have funds to make this happen? And then you just, because I'm working with a company about this, is okay, so what do we think is appropriate? Is it appropriate to bring people to a meaningful event once a week, once a month, once a quarter, once every year? And then to really train people on how to create meaningful events. That's why we created
just the training, right?
That's why we created, bringing back the buzz, because it really is a good training manual on how to create a meaningful event. Because we all know how to create an event. This is Priya Parker, which is wrote the book The Gathering, which is just
which was wonderful, right?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and it has the tools and an incredible resource. And we also talked to others like Barry Winkless, who talked about, you may have to hire this expertise.
Right.
It is so important.
Yeah.
You can't just be throwing these events over the fence.
Right.
So I want to share one with you that blew
let's go,
my
baby.
mind. This happened last month. And it was on Zoom. And they were told beforehand, the folks, the top team, to please prepare a story. And here's the criteria of what a good story should have. But that captures the essence of who and what we are in this company.
Wow.
So everyone had to come with that.
I like that.
They're telling their stories. They had a form. People were crying.
Right.
It was amazing. It's that emotional pull. Well, they wrote them up. They're going to go on their website.
Yeah.
They're going to do this once a quarter.
Yeah.
And it energized them also.
Yeah.
There is a memorable event with multiple outcomes. And that particular one was cheap. Now, there's expensive ones, as you said.
There are.
I know another company that actually hired someone to put a video game together about their company.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone had to go through the video game first.
Right.
And they built it around getting to higher levels of reaching our strategic goals by going through a scary funhouse.
Yeah. And so
that's expensive.
Yeah.
But
those are expensive. And we really want to just kind of point out and it is really time to bring people back together. So this is a Team Anywhere podcast.
Yep.
It is important, especially now, especially as a lot of countries, cities, towns, states are removing a lot of the barriers to get your people together to have meaningful events to do the same type of things that you're mentioning. Okay, let's go to the last.
All right, our last category is an interesting one.
What is it?
And it's called inclusive structures.
Inclusive structures. That would be coming from a PhD. Tell us. I don't have a PhD.
No. It came from Jennifer Moss.
Okay, Jennifer.
Okay, it came from Jennifer.
All right.
And basically, some very key things. One, yes, we need feedback from everybody. That's how you create people feeling included. And we're using, or she believes, and I think she's right, overusing surveys. We need more listening forums where you get 12 people or so either in person or on Zoom, and you listen to them. It's vocal. The vocal part adds more inclusion than me just
Yeah.
filling out a survey. I really like that one.
Yeah. You know what I like?
Uh,
What I like
yeah,
about
go ahead.
it is, so first of all, it's one thing to do a survey where I'm anonymous. It's higher level for me to tell you, my boss or the other people on the team, what I'm feeling, thinking. It's magic when I can have, let's say, a team of 12 people sharing, here is my experience. And the thing that I've
Ah,
found over the last 2 years is the greatest thing is that people go, oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
yep,
I feel the
that is
same
so true.
exact way.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but it keeps coming out every time someone tries to redo this research. The number one most powerful way
Uh-huh.
to communicate is small groups, either online or in person, for
Mhm.
the very reason you just said. They can play off of one another.
Right.
They see that they're not alone.
Yeah.
They can be acknowledged. So that in of itself. However, the
Small group.
key is creating those spaces,
Yeah.
those dialogue
Right.
spaces,
When you say
because
when
go
you
ahead.
say when you say creative space, I know it's a word that we
Yeah.
use a lot.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means? I'm in a
Yeah.
creative space.
I know. I love it. And I personally overuse it.
Yeah.
Make it happen. Almost like create the event,
Okay.
create the time on the calendar.
Okay.
It's a time where before and after, I'm only going to be focusing on talking about what's bothering me, having someone acknowledge that I need help,
Mhm.
talking about, hey, you know what? We blew it over the last month in the design we came up with, how people are going to come back to the
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
We apologize for that. Let's start over. What do you all think? How should we go about this? And I have found it's getting better.
Mhm.
Before the pandemic, as a consultant, I had to really claw at and
Mhm.
use my best negotiation skills to
Mhm.
get leaders
Yeah.
to create that space.
Right.
Now, we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I would have major reports, and at the end, I said, most of your problems can be fixed by once a month getting everyone in the room and talking about what's working, what's not working, what are the 2 or 3 things we're going to do. They accepted everything else in the report. They would not do that.
Yeah. So creating a space is really creating a time where all you're going to talk about, just to kind of sum this up, where you're going to be, honest, humble, and human. Creating a space is a meaningful event. Creating a space is, building social and emotional health, to share
Love that.
stories, to talk
Yep.
about work-life balance.
Yep.
But it's really, and even as you put it, we're going to create a space to say what's working, what's not working, what can we do better.
Yep.
These things sound simple. I think they're magic. The pandemic has been, horrible in terms of lost lives. It also is, out of the ashes comes an opportunity for us to go, okay, maybe, the creator is saying, here's a great opportunity for us to be honest, humble, and human again.
Perfect.
And maybe that's, it's funny, but our podcast was, oh, it's just corporate thing, but maybe our podcast has really come into how to be a human again,
Totally. Whatever the space is, to bring that word in one more
Spaces. Yeah.
time.
And so, so we wanted to thank everybody for allowing us into your lives and for us to, create that space. And, we're committed. We're always, Ginny and I are always talking about how can we make the podcast better? How can we make a podcast better? We're getting close to 10,000 downloads. So we think we got something going on here. And we wanted to just really thank you. I want to thank Ginny for putting this tool together. It was her genius to put this tool together.
And
So,
your marvelous editing.
thank you. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're still here, definitely download the tool, and we'd love to hear feedback on what you think about the tool and how we can make these podcasts better. And our commitment, we have a soft commitment, is to it's like a maybe commitment, not a leadership commitment. Our goal objective here is to do this around every 6 weeks to kind of step back. What are we hearing? And then what can we bring to our listeners, which is like, bop, bop, bop. This is what you need to do to really create a space and create an incredible experience so you can team anywhere. How's that? Was that good, Ginny, for our first one?
That was wonderful.
All right,
See
great.
you all next time.
Thank you. And so thank you, Ginny. Thank you we have no guests. So Ginny, you're the guest.
Yes, thanks each one another. Thank you so much.
Thank you to our listeners. And if you've really enjoyed and found a lot of benefit, please share this podcast with your friends, your colleagues, your family. And we'll see you next time on our next episode of Team Anywhere.